Hello and welcome. This is Lights Out, and away we go with the episode. We're the Formula One podcast for fans, by fans. I'm Will, and as I look across the digital garage, as always, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host and co-driver, Sam. Hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Hello, Will. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all good. How was it? How was your weekend?
It was very nice. Well, obviously, my partner and I saw you and yours, and my daughter as well on Saturday. That was very nice in London.
And that was only the second time we've seen each other in person since starting the podcast. Just not because we've been avoiding each other, just because somehow we just not ended up seeing each other.
No, it's been quite a hectic few months, isn't it? And we're very much embracing this new digital world we live in. But no, it was very nice to see you. And then quite a quiet couple of days after that. Obviously, had the Grand Prix on Sunday, and today was spent mostly walking and avoiding the rain. How about you?
Was it successful?
It was, yeah. We managed to find a nice window. It was really nice this evening. So my daughter loves being out at that time of day. She loves trees and blossom and cats and dogs and God knows what else. And there's all of that to see in our local area. So yeah, that was nice. How was your Sunday, Monday?
Yes. Well, Sunday quite hungover. I was out in Brighton on Saturday night, so I sadly, as we'll come on to, missed the race completely. So yeah, I was recovering from that on a train. But yeah, no, been very chill today. Been out, been active, and then saw my brother, so it was nice to catch up with him. Good to digest the Formula One. He sat through it as well, so he told me his story on it as well. So yeah, hi Greg, if you're listening. But yeah, Formula One was back this weekend after a 4-week break. We were back in Azerbaijan at the Baku street circuit. It was probably one of the quickest street circuits on the grid. Long straights, very tight corners. And I remember when I played the Formula One game that it was always marked as very difficult to drive. And I did struggle on that one. I'm sure, as we'll come on to, some drivers did find it quite a difficult one this weekend. But it has been the scene of some great races in the last 6 or so years since it's been on the calendar. Sam, I'll ask you 2 questions. How was the race? Because I didn't watch it. And who won the race?
Well, the race was meh, which we'll discuss at some length, I suspect, shortly, which was a bit of a shame given the level of excitement Baku has provided in previous years. And the race was won by the fastest car again, Will, which was the Oracle Red Bull, but it was driven by Sergio Perez rather than Max Verstappen this time. So that was quite interesting, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, as well. But Checo, Red Bull, still really good.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. So I saw bits of qualifying, of the 2 qualifyings, which we'll also cover in this episode as well. We've not gone insane. There were 2 qualifyings. But yes, Charles Leclerc did start the race on pole. I watched the highlights on YouTube this morning, and they obviously only covered the key bits and pieces. Now, firstly, I noticed that Max overtook him within 4 laps. Was there much of a contest in those first 4 laps, or was it pretty... he got up to him, and then next thing you know, he's past him. What was that like as a contest between the Ferrari and the Red Bull?
It wasn't really a contest, really. So Max drew in very, very quickly. He probably could have got a move done without DRS, but just waited and was just patient. Waited for the right opportunity, right moment, popped the DRS on the main straight, and overtook him on lap 4. Yeah, it wasn't a particularly difficult overtake. As again, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point during this episode. Yeah. And then, very similar with Checo, really. Both Red Bulls just breezed past the Ferrari, unfortunately. And this is a Ferrari as well that's pretty good on the straights this season. They've really reduced the level of drag on that car. For the overtakes to be that easy for Red Bull was a bit worrying. But not really much of a battle, no. I think Charles was, as soon as he was overtaken by both Red Bulls, he very quickly seemed to settle into a rhythm, knowing that he was going to finish third unless something crazy happened up front.
Yeah, I did see that he finished 20 seconds behind Max, who finished second. Charles did, and that kind of works out about half a second a lap, which is crazy. That's just and that's probably, as we've said several times, you and I both think that the Red Bull is being very, very deliberate in hiding its true pace. Yeah. I think that could have been 40 seconds if they really pushed the car, and that's if they pushed it a bit. I think they could have easily got out to being a second a lap quicker across the whole race.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that one, because I think that after the safety car, which again we'll talk about, the Red Bulls disappeared off into the distance at a a real rate of knots, sort of 8-9 tenths a lap. And then it did drop off a bit towards the end because they were managing their tyres. I don't know if that's because Max decided that he wasn't realistically going to be able to get Checo, or they both just ended up having to manage their tyres towards the end of the race. That's quite possible too. And again, we'll talk a bit about this in more detail, but it seems quite difficult to follow this season. So Max probably had a bit of trouble keeping up and staying as close to Checo as he'd like to make a real challenge for the lead. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it probably could have been more if both those cars were driving at their absolute peak speed.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating because the weekend had such promise. On Friday's qualifying and on Saturday's qualifying, I let myself dream for a moment that maybe the Ferrari had sometimes, maybe somehow appeared out of nowhere and suddenly fixed its race pace and its overall car pace, and would start having, this would be the start of the actual championship battle, and we'd suddenly have Ferrari win a number of races or be nearly winning races, so then we could have a battle. But actually, as I said in the episode last week, the Red Bull was pretty average, and I think they were quite poor in both the qualifyings. They both had pretty bad days at the office. But then on the Sunday, the car is a different beast in a race mode, and it pulls away.
Yeah, it does, and also don't underestimate sort of Charles's ability in qualifying. Like, he is Mr. Saturday, he can pull a lap out of that car, and I think I think his lap was 8 tenths quicker than his teammate in qualifying,
wow.
which does say, I think, something about the level of talent kicking around Charles
and
Leclerc.
The gap between the two of them, between him and Carlos.
Yeah, it was significant. So yeah, I agree. It was interesting. I mean, just seeing a different car on the front on pole was interesting, but it did feel very inevitable. I think even Charles seemed a little bit sort of circumspect about his chances at the start of the race, because he knows what that Red Bull's like on a Sunday. But yeah, the race developed sort of in an interesting way at the start, just because obviously we had Nick de Vries going off and a safety car coming out, and because Red Bull had sort of, to my mind, made a bit of a strategic error for them in bringing Max in sort of just after the incident had happened, but before a safety car had been called, rather than waiting a little bit longer and asking Max maybe to take the foot off a little bit, or indeed sending him around for another lap and having him pit under the safety car, he pitted early and lost 10, 12 seconds worth of time in that instant, because obviously the safety car then comes out, Checo gets to pit for a significant reduction in time, and comes out ahead of him. So that of itself made it quite interesting. And then we had the prospect of a big battle between Perez and Verstappen, but it never really materialized. Verstappen never really got close enough, which of itself is quite interesting. I think it says a lot about Checo's ability on street circuits as well. But yeah, no, apart from the sort of restart after the safety car, there wasn't a huge amount of excitement throughout the rest of the race. The restart had a couple of interesting, fun moments. I think shortly afterwards, Alonso steamed up the inside of Carlos Sainz at turn 4 and took third place. That was quite fun. Not third place, took fourth place. That was quite fun. And Hamilton as well, who was, as is traditional for Lewis Hamilton, seemingly anytime a safety car appears, it's never for his benefit. He pitted the lap before the safety car, just like Max did, or even a lap before that, actually. So he didn't even know there was a safety car, pitted the lap before. Then the safety car gets called and he ends up stuck behind his teammate, but he came steaming up the inside at turn 1 after the restart, without DRS, I might add. Put an overtake on his teammate and then ended up finishing quite well. So yeah, I mean, apart from that brief, 10 minutes probably, the rest of the race was a bit of a damp squib, really. What did you make of the highlights when you watched them?
Well, they were only 7 minutes long, and usually they're about 10 minutes long. So that shows you, they were probably struggling for content a bit to pad it out. And of one of those 7 minutes, there was a feature. One of the highlights was Lewis having a very standard pit stop that it seemed to then was never referred to in the next couple of highlights. So that was a bit random. But yeah, it didn't look like a big race. There were no real big crashes or big driver mistakes. So there were driver mistakes, and we'll come on to that. But usually back we have seen some massive shunts and some big crashes and lots of safety cars. Whereas I think 18 of the cars finished, and one of them finished because of technical. I think the other one finished because of minor damage or something like that. So yeah, but no, good to see Sergio win. He maintains his only street race wins for Red Bull, which is quite impressive of his wins so far. He's never won on a street circuit. And it's good for the championship because he obviously won the sprint race as well, so he got some points from that. So the gap now has gone from being 15 to 6, which is good because it's not, we were fearing that it would be sort of Max would go on a storm and we'd absolutely sort of lose all interest in the title battle. So we're kind of hoping that Checo can keep up this level of performance. And he has started the season incredibly well. He's probably driving the best he's ever driven for Red Bull or in his F1 career. I think I saw earlier that his first F1 win last season was at Monaco. And so Monaco comes almost halfway through the season. So it's good that he's come in quite early. And then he won in Saudi Arabia and he's won here, in the first 4 or 5 races. And last season, he won in Monaco. And then his next win wasn't until Singapore, whereas Singapore's in the last sort of third quarter of the calendar. So fingers crossed, Checo can keep up the big performance. What did you make of Checo's performance this weekend?
Yeah, he had a really good weekend. I think he had the edge on Max, to be honest, most of the weekend. I know
Max looked off the boil across everything that he looked. He didn't seem very happy.
He wasn't happy. No, he was extremely grumpy all weekend. He wasn't happy with the setup of the car. I mean, to some extent, he has some sympathy, really, because they only had one practice session, and once you've had that one session, you can't make any changes to the car, really. No material setup or changes. So, yeah, he wasn't really happy with the setup of the car. Obviously, he had his coming together with George during the sprint race, which was just very, very cross about. Used some naughty language after the race, called George a princess as well, which I thought was quite funny. But Checo, no, he had a really good weekend. He is a definite specialist, isn't he, in the old street circuits? He loves them. And that definitely showed this weekend. Yeah, he definitely had the edge on Max. And 2 of the next 3 are street races as well. We've got Miami and Monaco coming up, 2 of the next 3. So there is an opportunity there for him and his seeming specialism at street races to come good and maybe put a bit more pressure on Max. But all I would say is, and I don't want to dampen spirits because I'm really hoping we get a kind of Hamilton-Rosberg level into team rivalry this year, because obviously no other constructor are going to get close to Red Bull. Checo had quite a good start to last season, won Monaco, as you say, earned the new contract, and everyone was like, oh, this could be an interesting battle. And then Max won, 5 or 6 races or something on the trot and stretched away. I'm hoping that doesn't happen this year, and I hope we do get something close, but something tells me Max will probably come good at some point, and we'll see a string of wins, and then talk of a title battle will disappear quite quickly. But while we've got it, and certainly while we've got more street circuits coming up, fingers crossed he can keep up with it. But the car seems to be a bit more pliable for him this year as well. There's definitely something a bit different in its characteristics that make it a bit more user friendly for him too. So yeah, fingers crossed we can see some interesting on track battling. Yeah, we do. We were robbed of a really good on track battle this week. Hopefully we can have one at Miami next week.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because this is his 3rd season now with Red Bull, right? And so it's his 3rd season.
Yeah,
so he should feel even more confident and embedded in the team, and they know him better as well. So he should have that confidence, and hopefully he's kind of reflected on how last season went and goes, I need to be at my best every weekend, and sort of trying to find those differences as well. And you say there was no sort of contest as well. Was it a good weekend for the DRS, for the regulations? What was that like?
No, not really.
It didn't look good on the highlights. It looked pretty easy for everyone, bar a couple of risky overtakes, like you mentioned, Alonso going for an overtake at a corner you don't usually see an overtake at. But yeah, what was it like from a car regulation, sort of battling each other and overtaking and DRS?
Yeah, not brilliant. I'll try and limit my soapbox time a little bit in this podcast. So I'll start with DRS.
The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
And the timer is starting now.
So DRS wasn't particularly good. It's extremely overpowered for one team in particular, and then not for everybody else. So you end up with this very strange situation where you've got kind of one team who've absolutely nailed it, as they have in Red Bull, that are just seemingly capable of hitting the DRS button and overtaking anybody else. And then everybody else where the DRS doesn't really work as well, really. I mean, even Hamilton, he was in DRS for Carlos Sainz for ages and just couldn't get close. And then obviously we had the enormous DRS train, which for those of you that don't follow F1 really, really closely, is basically where you get a sequence of cars who are all quite evenly matched, stuck following each other, all getting DRS off of the car in front because they're all within a second. But it never really making much of a difference because obviously they've all got the same aerodynamic benefit and no overtakes happen. And Esteban Ocon was able to hold off I don't know, 2/3 of the field for 50 laps on the same set of tyres. He didn't change his tyres until the end. We should talk. We'll talk about the end of the Grand Prix, listener, as well. By the way, we know something crazy happened, but it's a whole separate conversation, so we're saving it. But yeah, Ocon stayed on old tyres for 50 laps. No one could overtake, even with DRS, and it seemed really difficult to follow. Even Max, as I've referenced, really struggled to get close to Checo. And the same goes for lots of other drivers as well. There are a few occasions where, like, Alonso was getting very close to Hamilton. We're thinking, we're going to get a good battle here. And then as soon as Alonso got within a second, even with DRS, suddenly his tyres started to struggle loads and he had to drop back off. And you just saw this concertina happen where all of the drivers ended up about 1.6 to 2 seconds apart because they knew if they got any closer than that, it would really hurt their grip and kill their tyres. So in terms of the new regulations, that's not really great. That's not what they wanted. They wanted closer racing. They wanted to make it much easier to follow. And it felt like we had that for sort of the first half of last season. But I'm not really sure what's happened. I think things have gone, technical development's gone in a specific direction. And all the things that these new regulations were supposed to bring have sort of evaporated, and we don't really see much close, or we haven't seen much close racing this season. And it just makes me long for the 2021 cars, really, because at least there you had two teams that were going at it at the top, and then everybody else was vaguely competitive, and you saw quite good battling with the likes of Ferrari and McLaren and teams in Alpine as well. Whereas this season you've got, as we've alluded to before, a big kind of average middle blob on the track, on the grid.
The midfield jumble.
The midfield jumble. They're all very evenly matched, and because they've all got basically the same benefit for DRS, and the regulations make it quite difficult to follow. Yeah, it's making the races a little bit dull, unfortunately. And the cars are still too big; they're far too heavy, etc., etc. There are other things I would change. We've got a whole episode on that, so feel free to go back and listen to it, listener. But as it stands at the moment, the current regulations aren't delivering what the FIA hoped they would.
Yeah, and Formula One as well, because I think the thing is quite helpful to sort of think about it. With the FIA, they're hoping the sport can be, just and fair, and they're the sort of the referee of it all. But Formula One, they're almost like the I'd say that they're like almost like the movie director. They're trying to make it an interesting, exciting spectacle, and so they've made changes. And they push the sport to be like this because they want it to be, exciting and entertaining. And when I was sort of following the race a bit on sort of Twitter on the train home, it was overwhelming. It wasn't just those that the Mercedes fanboys or the anti-Red Bull people. It was overwhelmingly the commentary on everyone from journalists to fans that I follow, and just sort of the general sort of chatter about the race was how boring it was. And what was interesting is a lot of it was about the cars. A lot of people were saying this, it's not the circuit here, it's the cars, and I think this season could be quite an important season for the future direction of Formula One, because we've talked about in the past about how Formula One has done a really good job of sort of increasing its popularity and getting the attention of people that wouldn't usually watch Formula One and now do. They've got to make sure the product is the best it can be, and if it's predictable and boring, people are going to stop tuning off. And you've spoken in the past about how the viewing figures are starting to dip already post 2021. I almost wonder if we get to the end of this season, the Formula One kind of get themselves into a boardroom and go, hang on a second, guys, this has gone the wrong direction. This is not what we wanted to. And I almost wonder if they will go the complete other direction. So we'll have much smaller cars, lighter cars, and just try and strip it back a bit, because I think they pushed it in a certain direction. And I think we're now sort of almost at the end of that sort of road, really, for trying to make it. It's obviously failed. It might be worth just to take it back to where we used to be. Because I saw a clip, and I think I sent it to you on Twitter earlier. It was a clip from 2012. I think it was the Chinese Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And there were 4 teams fighting for the win and the podium positions. Yep. About 6 cars. Mm-hmm. The cars were what? How much lighter? 10 kg lighter? 12?
Oh, much more.
Oh, much more. Okay.
Yeah. I think so. I think they were at least 150 kilograms lighter back then.
Oh, so way more. There was no DRS. Yeah. The aerodynamics is much different as well. The cars were shorter as well. And I think Formula One, we're watching this quite closely, I think. And I think we've not really heard it yet. I think people are still waiting to see what happens. But if we do have another sort of, I think, we are going to have a one-team dominant this year as well. But if we do have a boring championship battle, Formula One, I think, will start getting quite concerned about that, because that's what the sport was at its best at, right? When 2021 was probably for Formula One, the neutral owner of the sport, trying to make it entertaining, that was the perfect season. That's probably what they want every season. They're not getting that anymore.
Yep, absolutely. No, it will be interesting to see what they do. I mean, we've only had a few races this year, so we've got some way to go yet. Maybe things will change and we'll see developments move things along a bit. But yes, I mean, the problem they've got is these regulations are in place for a while. They couldn't just rip them up at the end of the season.
2026 is when the next change, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've got another 3 years. Potentially, yeah. Well, at least let's hope another team can at least make it interesting at the front. I don't think we're going to see much change in terms of making these cars like closer, like making them easier to race close together. I don't think you can design that out without serious regulation changes. If it was me, I was writing the regulations, I'd basically have a rule in place that stated that on the smallest, thinnest, skinniest track on the circuit, you have to be able to at least have 2 cars side by side at all times, if not ideally more than that, because they're just too big at the moment, and we'll see that when we've got some tracks coming up. And I mean, Monaco's an unfair example because we never really seen much overtaking there, but at least it was possible before, whereas now, I mean, we saw some really interesting overtakes into turn 1, didn't we, at Monaco before? It just feels like an impossibility now. The cars are just too big, too heavy.
Yeah, I mean, we could get some good crashes.
Yes, we could. That's true. Yeah,
there'll be people thinking there's a gap there, and they'll go and they're like, "Hang on a second, I'm driving a 2023 car."
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll see. So it's been a couple of weeks, and the Latifis have been collecting dust in the cupboard. We don't actually have Latifis. These are just theoretical. But it's time to award some Latifis. Sam, who are you awarding your Latifi to this weekend?
All right, so it's a relatively easy selection for me because it was sort of based on the same logic that I awarded Alex Albon his Latifi for the Australian Grand Prix. So if you remember, Alex Albon just ran off the track and spoiled what was a really good fight between Max and both Mercedes at the start.
And it was his fault.
And it was entirely his fault. He just lost the car, and it killed what looked like a really interesting 3-way battle for the lead. And that was probably going to be the highlight of that race. That was very frustrating. So I've awarded my Latifi for Nick de Vries. He had an absolute shocker of a weekend. I mean, he lost it in the race. So we'll start with that particular instance. So it was getting really interesting up front. Max and Checo were quite close to each other. Charles was still in the mix as well, trying to keep up and still in DRS. So it was looking like, we could see some interesting on-track action. And then Nick de Vries drove into the barrier and parked his car pretty unhelpfully on the side of this track that required the safety car and sort of killed that particular battle at the front. But he just had a terrible, terrible weekend aside from that. Because I saw the incident and thought, it's really annoying, and that's really irked me. I'm going to have to give him a Latifi for that. And then I thought about the rest of his weekend, and I thought, well, he's probably going to get one anyway. He had an absolute shocker, yeah. So, I mean, he binned it in qualifying as well on Friday, qualified last.
And what's interesting, that qualifying crash on Friday, so it's the same corner he crashed in the race, but in the race he clips his left wheel because he's too tight going into the corner.
Yeah.
On Friday he's carrying too much speed in, so he goes to the right of the corner and absolutely properly bins the front of the car into the barriers there. So yeah.
Yep. And then qualified last in the sprint on Saturday as well. And then binned it in the race while his teammate went and collected points, by the way. Yuki Tsunoda went and got first points for the season. And it's just like it could not have been much of couldn't have been a worse weekend for Nick de Vries. So a pretty easy Latifi award for having a poor weekend and just annoying me, because why not? It's my Latifi to award. And I've awarded one to Nick de Vries for annoying me.
Do you think he's going to last the season? Because he's in a Red Bull team, and although it's not in a Red Bull car, do you think they could get a bit brutal with him and sort of if this continues on? Because to look back his past few races since I know it's his rookie season Formula One, but he is 27 and he has won. He's a Formula E world champion. Do you think patience could run thin at AlphaTauri and with in the Red Bull family if this continues?
Yes. I think so. Any more weekends like this, and I'd be worried if I was him. I mean, he's part of the Red Bull program. We know how ruthless they are. We've seen better drivers than Nick de Vries get cut and binned off because they've had a tough time of it. So yes, I would be a bit worried if I was him. He's had a very, very poor start. in general. I mean, the AlphaTauri's not been brilliant, but Tsunoda's done a relatively good job with it.
He looks like he's got better as well.
I think he has. He definitely has. And I think as well, he's probably confident because he knows he's got a teammate he can beat. Last year he was up against Gasly, and he's a very good driver himself. So, yeah, it's not looking good for De Vries. He needs to probably turn out some performances. So we've got, I don't know what it is. It's 5 races in the next 6 weeks or something like that. Like, that is a good run there. And there's lots of races he knows well. I mean, to some extent, there's a bit of a, like, gets a bit of a break because Baku, as we've alluded to, is a really difficult circuit. These cars are quite difficult to drive. It would have been the first time he drove it in a Formula One car. Like, he gets some kind of benefit of being new to some extent. But there are a load of races coming up in Europe next. The tracks that he knows very, very well, he won't have that excuse anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Red Bull hierarchy will be watching because there are a long list of other drivers still waiting to get into Formula One that would snap that seat up in a heartbeat.
I've just given it a quick Google.
Yeah.
And Nick De Vries is also last in the championship on 0 points, and above him is Logan Sargent on 0 points. But then in 16th is his teammate, is good old Yuki Tsunoda, on 2 points. So he's not massively ahead, but the performances have been poles apart. So
yeah, but that's two separate points finishes for Yuki now.
Yeah,
in 4 races,
he had 3 consecutive. He had 2 consecutive 11s. He did have a third, and then he actually got a point in Australia. So yeah, he's had 2 consecutive 11s. So it's not like he's been miles away. So yeah.
Yeah. So he is smashing his teammate. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nick De Vries should be a bit worried, I think. He's got a...
But at least he's got a Latifi. So that's, he's not walked out the weekend completely empty-handed.
Should we tweet him? Let him know. Lucky Ducky is one in Latifi. He'll be thrilled.
Yeah. That'd be quite funny.
I can probably have a guess at who your Latifi's being awarded to, but go on, tell me.
So you've teased it a little bit already, but it is pretty clear cut who mine is. So mine's is for the pit lane manager of the Baku street circuit. So I don't know if you didn't see the race and you didn't see this on Twitter, I'll just set the scene for you because this is how I first saw it, was on Twitter. It is the 58th lap of the race, is it? Out of 59?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's the last lap of the race. Quite crucial detail. And as you said earlier, Esteban Ocon spent the whole race on his set tyres. And in Formula One, the rule is you have to do a mandatory pit stop. And so I think Ocon was hoping for a safety car. So then he wouldn't, within those last sort of 10, 15 laps, and then they'd be fine. But obviously that doesn't happen. So he's got to pit on the last lap of the race. The pit lane manager at Baku, who probably works for the FIA, decides that they can start setting up the pit lane for Parc Ferme, which is when the race ends and they stop all the cars and they weigh all the drivers, and they can start getting all the podium sort of signs out ready for when the cars finish the race at the end of that lap and can come in. But they have not realised that Esteban Ocon is still to pit and has got to come into the pit on this very lap. So what you see is people, but I would say it's a good group of people. It's about 30, 40 people, all at the very, very entrance of the pit lane, getting stuff ready. Like when you're like in a shop and you have those sort of like what they call the belt like line things that sort of form the queues, and they got them at like airports as well. Those sort of line things,
barricade things,
lines, whatever they're called. Someone is literally pulling one of those out to stop fans and other people coming down that bit there at one part of the pit lane, and there's all these people in the very middle of the actual lane, not in just generally around it, in the very middle of the pit lane. And then you see Esteban Ocon, because it's a very quick pit entrance, fly in, and then I think he puts the limiter on, so he's doing about 50, 60 miles per hour, going down this pit lane as people are literally running out of the way of this incoming, very fast, very expensive Formula One car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unbelievable. I saw the first sort of screenshot, so blimey, that's crazy. And then you watch the onboard footage, and we'll post this on our social media, some of the stills from it. People are literally like moving at literally at the very last second to avoid being hit from it. It's one of the most extraordinary and most reckless things I've ever seen. So dangerous and so terrifying how close people got to being hit at 60 miles per hour. And it's just madness. It's a race is still ongoing. You can't act like the race is not going. And apparently, I didn't realize this. Apparently, this happened at the Australian Grand Prix last year. So someone in the FIA has not made sure that change or whether that process wasn't fixed or looked at properly, because it's been allowed to happen again. I did see that whoever was the pit lane manager got called up to the stewards to go and explain themselves, and they issued apology. But it's one of the most extraordinarily awful, like close to awful things I think I've ever seen. It's just like terrifying, that onboard footage. So as you can probably hear through the rage and the rage in my voice, it's an easy win for the pit lane manager at Baku.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. It's yet another one for the FIA. They're really collecting them now.
Yeah, well, I suppose for our record, it goes down as the FIA's pit lane manager in Baku.
Yeah,
I don't know, unless it's the same person that turns up every weekend and does it, and we have another repeat of them. I feel like that person was going to end up that's going to be the only one awarded to that person.
It could be. I don't know. Well, I think that's one for us to look into, maybe, and we'll cover it another time. I mean, hopefully, it doesn't happen again. But yeah, it's just incredibly stupid, incredibly dangerous. As you say, those cars are heavy, traveling quite quickly. They're also entirely made of carbon fiber, which if anyone's ever picked up a piece of carbon fiber, it is unbelievably sharp. Like, you're losing limbs levels of sharp. That's why they always have to spend ages cleaning up after an incident, because it's really dangerous to leave it lying around on the track, because it just shreds everything. And it gets flicked up and can cause real damage to people. So yeah, it's really worth listening to, like watching that last lap again on Sky, because Ted, the best thing about Sky Sports, Kravitz, covers it really well. Like he's in the pit lane as always, and he's watching it unfold, and he's basically commentating as it's going, and he's just there going, "Oh no, they don't realise they're all in the pit lane. Ocon's still got a pit, and this is before Ocon's even come in. Like he knows it's about to happen. He's watching it unfold, and there's nothing he can do about it, and he's just watching, going, "Oh god!" And then Ocon comes in, and of course it's just absolute carnage, and it's clown car kind of cartoon level stuff, like people like diving out of the way. It's just, absolutely crackers. How that kind of thing's been allowed to happen is just beyond me. But then again, how many more mental incidents do we have to see unfold under the watch of people from the FIA before they realise they're not very good at their jobs?
Well, maybe at the end of the season we say, lads, FYI, you've won 23 Latifis in our Latifi Awards. I think you need to go and have a look at yourselves, because maybe that'll make them take note.
Yeah, just terrible, really terrible. And some of the pictures are just, I mean, there's a shot, isn't there, I think, of an overhead shot of Ocon coming down the pit lane, and then people with the metal barrier like across the, like, chuckle vision levels of mad. Like the metal barrier is literally across the road that Ocon's driving down. It's like, and they quickly realise they have to dive out of the way. It's just, absolute crackers. There we go.
Then, what I find mad, and this is the last thing I'll say in it, is like how it's not just one person stood in the middle of the pit lane. It's 30, 40 people that none of them have picked up or realised that the race is still ongoing, and that one of the people has to come in. I don't know if that's usually the process, but surely the logic should be no one goes down the pit lane until the race is over, because you never know what could happen in the last lap, because someone could pit unexpectedly with a technical fault or mechanical fault.
It's just I'm kind of at a loss, really, because how hard is it for someone who's in charge to be watching what's happening in the race and seeing that, like, everyone's watched Esteban Ocon hold the entire field up for the entire race on this old set of tyres. We know he has to pit on the last lap because there's not been a safety car or a red flag, as they were hoping for, as is their right, by the way. Alpine have got a bit of stick for that strategy, but that's totally their call, and like they're absolutely right to try and make best of that. How difficult is it to just keep an eye on what's happening in the race and be like, oh yeah, okay, there's still a car that's probably going to come in and pit. Let's not send all our staff down to the pit lane yet.
Yeah,
madness.
They're probably all napping because they were so bored of the actual race.
Yes, maybe.
Before going to a break, I just thought we could just maybe spend about 5 minutes or so, if that, just giving a bit more love and attention to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. You did touch on it that he was Mr. Saturday and he was Mr. Friday because he caught of the qualifying there as well. They had they were unexpectedly pacey this weekend. I don't think you or I saw them claiming a pole position or 2 pole positions in the qualifying. What any sort of further thoughts on what you make of Ferrari this weekend?
So Charles made an interesting remark on Friday, something to the effect of they were doing something different with their tyre strategy this weekend. So everybody knows that the Ferrari is quite hard on its tyres; it chews them up a bit, and that's made them extremely cautious, I think, the first few races. Now, I don't know if they've necessarily just thrown caution to the wind and said, you know what, let's just go as fast as we can. If we have to pit an extra time, so be it. They didn't end up doing that in the race, but they've definitely found some pace from somewhere, be it tyre strategy or whatever. As I said earlier, don't underestimate the quality of Charles, and that is absolutely a factor. But yeah, it does look like they've maybe closed the gap a little bit. I didn't see any upgrades necessarily. They may have introduced some that people aren't aware of or the press haven't got hold of, but yeah, no, they've definitely closed the gap a bit. Not to any significant extent, because as you've alluded to, the Red Bulls drove off into the distance on Sunday. But yeah, it is interesting. They've seemingly closed the gap definitely in qualifying, and there are some circuits coming up where that could pay dividends for them. I mean, Monaco's an obvious one. Fingers crossed. Come on, Charles, please have some luck at home in Monaco.
He's never won it, despite being on pole twice.
Yeah. Surely, third time's a charm.
Maybe that'll be one of the 3 races this year that's not won by a Red Bull.
I'll tell you what, if I get Charles in the predictions game for Monaco, I'll predict him to finish. I'll predict him to win it.
Nice.
I just feel like it's his time.
Nice. I'm excited to hear where I've come to predict him as an aside, but yeah, I thought of what I saw of Ferrari, they did look unexpectedly quick, which is great to see. And I think they'd had some new upgrades actually in Australia, but I think they'd had a bit of disrupted weekend with the DNF for Charles, and then the problems that Carlos had at the end of the race as well. So I think they're a bit more confident on the car setup as well. But I just got a sense that Charles getting pole in the Friday sprint qualifying did the world of good to his confidence. He just seemed a lot more confident and relaxed. I think he was quite frustrated, but he just seemed a lot more confident and happy in the rest of the weekend. And it might have been because of the qualifying. It may have been because his piano song that's on Spotify. This I'm not making this up. He's got a piano song called Australian Grand Prix 2023 on Spotify. It's in the top 10 global songs on Spotify at the moment. Maybe he was just very happy that his piano career was taking off. Would recommend a listen. It's quite a moody piece of music for a bit of piano.
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if him and Lewis will do a collab. Lewis will be on the vocals and he'll be tinkling the ivories. But we'll see. But I did see this quite interesting stat about Charles Leclerc. He's only won from pole 4 times out of 19 times claiming a pole position. So quite a poor conversion rate. Yeah. Whereas someone like Lewis is probably sky high. And I've got a question for you, an unexpected quiz question for you. Which driver has 100% record? So he's won every race they've been on pole for.
Oh, that's a good question.
If you get this, I'll be amazed.
Is it someone who's won multiple races, or someone who's like won one and they happen to have been on pole?
If I answer, that's no. They've only won one race, but that kind of gives it away.
Does it? I don't know if it does.
Well, I think it does.
You're
now racking your brains of all the one race winners in recent years.
Jarno Trulli? Did he win one? No.
I don't know. I don't know enough about Jarno Trulli. I was a youngster when he was
I think he won one. Okay, so it's a recent driver, is it?
Within the last 10 years? 12 years?
I'm not sure.
I think he was the answer to a quiz question in one of our first ever episodes.
Not Maldonado.
It is Pastor Maldonado.
No, it's not.
He got pole and he won in Barcelona.
Oh, goodness.
His one and only race win, the meme that is Pastor Maldonado, with an amazing stat in Formula 1 history as well. So I like that.
Everyone's favourite quiz answer.
Yeah, Pastor Maldonado. I mean, it's a shame because I feel like if Pastor Maldonado was in Formula 1 today, he would be a mega star. Whereas people listening to this now will probably hear us going, who on earth is Pastor Maldonado? But he was very meme-worthy, very entertaining for quite comical reasons. And obviously, fair play to him. He did win a race, which is something that Nicholas Latifi never did.
Indeed.
And with that, we'll take a quick break. Hello and welcome back from the break. We hope you had a jolly old time. We had a very jolly time here. We were just talking about Pastor Maldonado and doing a deep dive through his Wikipedia page. I think we're both going to go and have a look through his highlights on YouTube. Before we jump back into Formula 1, well, this weekend in Formula 1, there was a very big news story in the Formula One world this weekend, and that concerned our very own anti-hero, Fernando Alonso, and the writer of Anti-Hero, Taylor Swift.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. You won't believe this is all true. There are genuine rumors that is going around the world in reputable newspapers now that Fernando Alonso and Taylor Swift are dating. It came from, I think, basically she broke up with a boyfriend a couple of weeks ago. He broke up with his girlfriend a couple of weeks ago as well. I think in the 4-week periods, I think some Spanish news site, from not a big one, quite a small niche one actually, I think, from my further research. I think they got a bit bored and decided to just put 2 and 2 together and say they're dating. So it was the big talk of Formula One this weekend. Is it a love story in the making, or is it just the other side of the door? F1 fans are speculating if the F1 driver has enchanting Taylor with his charm, and if she's ready to say, "You belong with me." Apparently, when asked about it, Alonso said he was just going to shake it off. Shake it off. How many of those references did you get?
I've got nothing. I have heard of Shake It Off, the song, and of course I've heard of Fernando Alonso. The rest of that particular bit, I'm afraid you're talking to the wrong person, mate.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'm sure if there are any listeners that are massive Taylor fans, they can go back and listen to how many Taylor Swift, or see how many Taylor Swift song lyrics there were in that bit I just did then.
Until I see Taylor Swift on the grid or in the Aston Martin garage, I don't believe a word of this chat that's clearly come from a man in his basement. And speaking as a man currently sat in his basement, I can tell you with some authority, I have no idea what's going on in either Fernando Alonso or Taylor Swift's love lives.
Nice. Well, I've got you up to speed down the latest, and I've also used some good Taylor Swift song lyrics to tell the story there. It's just another love story. There we go. Moving back to actual Formula One related conversation and discussion. This weekend, I think we've covered the race. Obviously it wasn't it wasn't a thriller, but this weekend was the first time we had a change to the sprint weekend format. So I'll just, if you didn't catch this, I'll just quickly tell you an overview of what changes there are. So usually we have 3 practice sessions, 2 on a Friday, 1 on a Saturday morning, and then we have qualifying, and then we have the race on the Sunday. They've changed it for the sprint format, because usually with the sprint format, we'd usually have Friday practice in the day. We then have qualifying for the sprint race on the Friday afternoon. We then have we'd have a Saturday practice before the sprint race, and then we'd have the sprint race result would then decide the race starting grid. Formula One this week announced before Baku that they were making some changes to it based on, I think, how they thought it was going. So we now have 1 practice session on a Friday instead of 3 of the weekend. We have qualifying for the race on a Friday. We then have a shortened sprint qualifying on the Saturday morning. We then have the sprint race, and then we have the race on the Sunday. So it makes a Saturday basically sprint only. So the qualifying and the race is all covered in that one day. I didn't see all of it. I mean, I only saw the Friday qualifying for the race, which was quite entertaining because I don't usually watch Fridays just for a number of reasons. But I think it felt like quite a good time, I think, with my lunchtime, so I was able to sort of watch it, which I probably wouldn't have done if it was Friday practice. Sam, did you catch much of it? I mean, actually, I don't know why I'm asking this question, because I know you didn't catch it. we were together when the sprint race is on, so I'll quickly recover it, just like Fernando Alonso almost crashing his car at the weekend. I did see that in the highlights. Sam, what did you make of these changes? Do you think they'll work? Do you think it'll make it more entertaining?
I don't know if it's made it less entertaining. I'll say that much. No, I didn't watch it. I was busy drinking beers with you, so I didn't see it on Saturday. Yeah, it's a bit, I don't know. It's a bit marketing-y for me. Like sprint Saturdays. It's just a bit.
Is it sprint special Saturday? Isn't it?
Something like
that's what they dubbed it.
It just smells a bit.
It's smells of it.
It does. So I don't mind. So I'm not generally a massive fan with what they do with sprints beforehand anyway. And I do think the Saturday, the old format, was a bit stupid, because you had the sprint race on the Saturday and then you had a really pointless practice session either before or afterwards where nobody could make any changes, because the qualifying already happened, and the cars are under parc fermé conditions, so you can't make changes to setups and stuff. So the whole practice session ends up being a total waste of time on a Saturday. With that being said, I don't think practice sessions are the worst thing in the world anyway. Like a normal Grand Prix weekend where you have 3 practices, a qualifying and a race was always fine for me. Like, I agree with you. Like, I didn't really watch much of a Friday. I mean, we both have jobs, so there isn't much opportunity for us to watch Formula One in the day on Friday. So yeah, I sort of made my peace with missing most practice sessions, and that's fine. And I just tune in for a Saturday and a Sunday. But that never really made me think, oh, I really wish we'd get a sprint race on a Saturday and replace that whole system with something else. And what they've replaced it with is a bit meh, to be honest. I don't know. I think 2 qualifying sessions feels a bit weird, and it is a bit odd having a qualifying session for the Grand Prix on a Friday and then a whole day of other stuff, the sprint qualifying and then the sprint shootout race thing, all happening on the Saturday before the Grand Prix. It just, I don't know, it didn't quite work for me. I don't think it's like I can see why they've done it, but I think it's driven by revenue rather than for the good of the sport. I think like no one really watched much on a Friday before. Most people still don't really travel to a circuit and sit around watching practice and stuff on a Friday. So I can understand why they want to make those changes and get people interested in what happens on a Friday. But I don't know if this really does that job. So yeah, not too sure really.
Yeah, I'm kind of want to see it how it goes, because I do think the drivers have said they don't need 3 practice sessions, and it kind of makes it a bit more interesting if they have less time to sort of hone and really perfect their setup, which so I'm kind of keen for that. And yeah, you're right. I think it is purely just to make for the fan attending the Grand Prix at the weekend to get something a bit more out of a Friday, make it people more want to go to a Friday because they're going to see a qualifying, or if you're going to see a Saturday, you're going to see a race in some form, even if it's not the full hog. So there's obviously that sort of drive. And when I read the Formula One press release for it, the word entertainment featured a lot, and that seemed to be the main reason to make it more entertaining, which I don't have any major issues with, but it's like at what cost? But also, if you're doing it for entertainment and it then doesn't live up to entertainment's sake, then I'm not quite sure, because I think I got the sense that I really enjoyed the qualifying on the Friday and also rewatching the qualifying, the second qualifying on the Saturday. But I think as we were saying, we were sinking pints when the race was the sprint race was on the Saturday afternoon. I didn't get the sense I'd missed anything special. I also got the sense it was pretty drab. My brother Greg said that I think there'd been a crash with Yuki Tsunoda. So of the 17 laps, 5 were under the safety car. So we've only got 12 proper laps of racing.
Yeah.
Then it's not that entertaining. So I think there's definitely an issue with like making it interesting racing. And I think we've talked about this before. I think they just need to play around with the format to get it a bit more exciting, a bit more fun, because I think a lot of the drivers are probably quite cautious in those races and not really pushing each other. So maybe they should just use it real opportunity to do something really different. So it is a really different race. So people have to race differently. So if it's reverse grids or no DRS, or safety laps not counting, I don't know. But I think fundamentally the sprint race is not working in Formula One. I don't think we've had many. I think the only good sprint race I can think of in the 2 years they've been in Formula One is Brazil, when Lewis charged the field.
Yep.
I think apart from that, a lot of them have been very, very anticlimactic and very forgettable.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think they should look at doing something different. I think reverse grid, something like that would be great, but that's probably a bit too radical. I'm not sure the teams like that very much. It did give us one interesting moment, the sprint race, and that was George sending it up the inside of Max and slightly driving to the side of him, taking a chunk of his side pod, and then that whole drama ensuing, which was quite fun. But apart from that, I mean, yeah.
It's classic. Just on that, that's just classic Max Verstappen behavior. Does not like being on the end of someone driving like Max Verstappen and pushing him around. That's exactly what he does to everyone else. Everyone just gets up, gets on with it, and either concedes the space or avoids the contact, or they don't crash.
Yep.
Or they do crash, and they don't make a thing of it. Whereas as soon as he's out the car, he's storming over to George and calling him expletives in shot of the in shot of the microphone as well. Not good for the old reputation, I don't think, there, Max. But who am I to assess you on, tell you what to do with your reputation?
Indeed, no, it was quite fun. I think we will hopefully get to see a bit of a rivalry between those two in the future. Yeah. I think it could be quite good fun. George's got quite a good sense of humor, I think, as well. He's very, very dry, So some of the stuff after the race, he was just a bit like, "Oh, I think Maxwell reflects on those comments poorly," or something. It was just such like a little dig, but like in a very kind of polite George Russell way. It was really funny.
He's very British of him.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think we should we should park the discussion there on the actual race. I think we should now come on to the predictions game. So if you didn't hear our last episode, Sam, give the listener a quick recap on what the predictions game is. This is the first time we've first Grand Prix we've had the predictions game in place. So Sam, give us a quick recap of the predictions game.
I got all right. So we felt a bit dirty, didn't we, making the same prediction every week, basically predicting a Red Bull to win, be it Checo or Max. So decided to spice up the predictions a little bit and make it a bit more of a competition between us. So the way it works is before every race, I will use a random number generator to pick 3 numbers between 1 and 20. And the 3 numbers that we each get corresponds to drivers and their current positions in the World Drivers' Championship. And then we have to predict their final positions based on the final classification on Sunday for that Grand Prix. And the further away you are, if you are at all, from each of your predictions, the worse, basically. So if you predict someone to finish first and they finish third, you're obviously you've missed them by 2, so you get 2 points. You top them up at the end of each race, and the person with the fewest points wins. That's the premise.
Points are bad. Points
are bad. Correct. And last podcast, last week, you had to predict the positions for Sergio Perez, Oscar Piastri, and Carlos Sainz. And I had to predict the positions for Kevin Magnussen, Logan Sargent, and Charles Leclerc. So we'll start with yours. So you predicted Checo to finish in second place. He won the Grand Prix, of course, so you gain a point there. So 1 point.
1 point.
1 point. Oscar Piastri, you very optimistically predicted to finish in 7th position.
I regret it as soon as I said it, and because you said locked in, it was locked in. And even when I was just thinking about it the next day, I was like, why did I say Piastri 7th? And that was even before the Grand Prix.
So he finished 11th. So you're only 4 out. It could have been much worse. Esteban Ocon did you a massive favour there, burning through those tyres and then taking that pit stop.
Yeah.
As did someone else did that as well. I think it was Hulkenberg, wasn't it? Yeah, both of them tried that tactic. It didn't really work out. Anyway, Piastri finished 11th, so you got 4 points for that. And Carlos Sainz, you predicted him to finish 6th, and he ended up finishing 5th. So only one out. So your grand total from the Baku Grand Prix is 6.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. I'm pretty happy. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I drew Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah.
I predicted him to finish 11th. He finished 13th.
Ooh. Okay.
So that's 2 out. Logan Sargent, I predicted to finish 19th. He finished in 16th. So that's 3 out. So I'm on 5 points. So I basically need a nailed on correct prediction or 1 out to draw or win.
Okay.
I predicted Charles Leclerc to finish 5th, and he ended up finishing 3rd.
Yes.
So I got 2 points, and I finished on 7. So Will, congratulations! You are the inaugural winner of the new Lights Out predictions game by 1 point. Well done.
Sponsored by Oracle.
Sponsored by Oracle, yes.
Until they actually do sponsor us. I'm glad. That's very close. I think we're gonna keep a tab. Like we're gonna keep a record of this every race week. So then at the end of the season, we'll be able to see the total number of points we've got. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of we'll look at the summer break, but it'll be good to see where we end up, like how close we are by the end of the season. Imagine if we were just like a point out by the end of the season.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. We'll get Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher levels of close.
Yeah, let's hope our rivalry's just as good.
Yes. All right. Would you like to know who you've drawn for the Miami Grand Prix?
Yes, go on, hit me. Let's go. No stupid predictions.
Straight out the blocks, you got number 1, Max Verstappen.
Okay, I'm going first. He's gonna win. He's gonna come back and win this weekend.
Okay, so I'm praying for a Max DNF there. Unlikely. Your second driver is the second number was George Russell.
Okay,
so number 7, George Russell.
I think he's gonna go 5th.
Okay. And your final driver was number 14, and that's Pierre Gasly.
I think Pierre Gasly is going to finish 10th.
Oh, okay.
So I was pretty confident in all of those there. As soon as I thought about them, the only one I'm now sort of second guessing myself on or doubting is the George Russell one, because he would have to be the quickest.
So I think you've done well there. So I think drawing Max is good. So I'm a bit worried. So I know what 3 drivers I've got. Obviously, you don't yet. I'm a bit worried about the Miami Grand Prix because I think Max, the odds of him winning that race are pretty good. So that's a probable, quite a possible nil there. But we'll see. That's why I'm thinking, come on DNF. Russell. Well, interestingly, you've got Max and George there, who both came together as we've talked about in the most recent race. So if they take each other out, that would go very well for me.
That'd be quite entertaining with the weekend we have, where one of us predicts someone becoming like second or third or first, and then them being like 17th or 20th. Like, that'd be massive for the scores. So tell me, who've you got then, and what are your predictions?
So I got my lucky number 10, and that is Nico Hülkenberg, and I've predicted him to finish 10th. Hülkenberg.
Ooh, so him and Gasly are both vying for 10th in our predictions, so we're clashing there.
Yes, sir. I then drew number 9, which is Lando Norris. Ooh. I've predicted him to finish 8th because I think McLaren have picked up a bit of picked up a bit of speed and he could finish in the points. And then I got number 17, which is Alex Albon. And I've gone for him.
This is hard because you've got you could finish anywhere between 10th and 20th, or in theory.
I know.
Actually, realistically, so you're probably like 7th until 20th, right?
Yeah. And I think that's probably true of most of the 3, although all 3 of those drivers, like Hülkenberg, Lando, and Albon. That's why I'm a bit worried. Anyway, we'll see. Hope springs eternal. Alex Albon, I've gone to finish 14th. Ooh. So there are our predictions locked in. And also, incidentally, listener, Will and I are going to be watching the qualifying on Saturday together. So we'll keep an eye on the results with the predictions in mind.
Yeah, should be good. Oh, I'm excited for round 2 of the predictions game. Can I get a bit of a win streak on, just like the Red Bulls are doing and Max are doing, and got a bit of a charge here.
Right.
Oh, and we should say when we were sinking pints on Friday, not Friday, on Saturday, when we were sinking pints, we did come up with the forfeit if you're the loser of this. I can't believe you came up with this forfeit and you're the one that's forgotten this because you've lost deliberately, I think. Sam, you can now explain to the listener what the forfeit is if you're the loser come the end of this season in the predictions game.
Yes, all right. So if you lose at the end of this, if you lose over the course of the season, so we should decide whether it's a loss is you've lost the weekend or you've lost overall on points across the whole season. We can. What do you think?
I think overall. I think that's
points overall.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I'm happy to do that. So I don't know. Maybe we need some kind of individual prize or something for each race. Well, there's a lot of races in there. We'll ponder that one, listeners. But anyway, the forfeit for the loser at the end of the season is that it means that the loser in the first podcast of the following season has to be wearing Red Bull memorabilia and branded swag in some form or another.
Because we've given them such a hard time. If that's me.
Yeah. That's the forfeit. Yeah. It's a good one. And I'm now terrified because I'm already 1 point down. Got some ground to make up already.
What's going to be like the smallest piece of memorabilia you wear, like a cap or something? Maybe then, I don't know.
I think a cap would be. I would say a cap is the minimum. I don't want to see either of us rocking up with a little tiny like badge. It's got to be a full thing, like either a shirt or a hat or something, face mask, whatever.
Okay. Well, that's going to add a bit of jeopardy to the game because neither of us want that at the end of the season.
No, definitely not. I mean, I don't generally like. And sorry if you're a mad F1 nut who does this, but when I see fans walking around in like the full kit, like the shirt, the trousers, the hat, the full kind of. Yeah, that's not a great look, I don't think personally. No. So yes, good forfeit. That brings us to the end of the podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you enjoyed it, why don't you share it with a friend? Hopefully they enjoy the pod more than Max Verstappen enjoyed being out Max Verstappened by Russell in the sprint race on Saturday. Do follow us on Twitter at Lights Out Lads, and on Instagram we are at the Lights Out Pod. Will, we are off to Miami.
We are. Well, we're not in person, but we are as the sport. We are. So it should be a good one. Let's hope it's a better race than it was last time. It was a very big spectacle, big event last year. That Formula One being in Miami for the first time. I feel like there's been not much hype about it this year in comparison to last year. I'm sure that will ramp up. And it's the first of 3 times we head to America this season. And I've heard that last season's fake marina, where they had a load of really expensive boats in a marina that had no actual water in it, but sort of next to the circuit, that's actually been made into a proper full-on marina this time. So that'll be exciting to see on the coverage as well. And it'll be the first race of the season so far I will watch from start to finish. There's no early start with failed alarm clocks. There's no train journeys. I'll be able to watch it all, take it all in. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I think we can quickly cover this now. I think we're both predicting a Max Verstappen win.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Or a Red Bull win at that.
No, I think Max will come back. He's he'll want retribution, won't he, for missing out this weekend.
He will. And with that, I'll leave that as the final thought of the podcast. That's all from us. All the best, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.